I'm not against objective news sources. Like, for example, the folks over at News Nation are trying to be down the middle on their news approach. And I love the folks at News Nation, and I appreciate the mission. The channel is not enjoying the kind of success I'm sure they'd like to. I don't know what the market is anymore for that kind of thing. I think people kind of want to hear their worldview affirmed. My own experience on this show is, and I think this is the reason behind our success, I'm convinced of it, that we stay factual. We don't misinform the audience. Like, it is important to me to not misinform the audience on facts. I never want my audience to be embarrassed when talking about a story because they have their head in the clouds and have only been spun by, a right winger or a left winger. But also I have a point of view. So I'll tell them how I feel about the news and how I feel about the facts. But the facts are knowable, and they shouldn't always be pro-Republican or pro-Democrat. They should just be facts. And that is tough to do. I think it can be done. I think, I feel like we are doing it, and others in small group are doing it. But the Washington Post isn't really doing it. They have surrendered to storylines. And I think that WAPO's having the same problem now that CNN had. Do you remember those 2 minutes, Tom, when CNN was purchased and the Discovery Group got involved and they said, we're going to try to go back to what we used to be, which was rather boring, but factually correct, right? Or at least trying to be factually correct. They were always boring. They were never exciting. They never hired interesting personalities. I'll never forget Roger Ailes talking to Jeff Zucker when Zucker first got hired over there. And he asked Roger for advice. I was in his office and and he said, do you have any advice for me? And Roger said, well, I could certainly use another few hours of Wolf Blitzer. So they've never had a bunch of dynamic personalities over there, but they used to at least be someplace you could go for facts. And then they surrendered it under Zucker to ideology. And then they decided for 2 minutes to try to go back to the old CNN. And two things happened. Chris Licht got fired, who was trying to do it. You remember, first he demoted and then fired Don Lemon. He got rid of Stelter. He tried to have that town hall with Trump, with Caitlin Collins, where she decided to be this hard partisan as opposed to objective news. But he was trying to put Trump on CNN. They had a leftist meltdown of their audience. And then they immediately switched back to just, okay, we're leftists. We're MSNBC by different call letters. Because once you've alienated half of your audience and basically told them that you hate them, Tom, it's very, very hard to get them back.
No, that's exactly right. And you're right. CNN did have for a long time, they had a sort of centrist brand, and they were known for, you tune into them when you wanted, when there was a natural disaster or a plane crash or whatever, for sort of the hard news. And they went away from that and they started hiring some person because I think they saw the success of Fox and of MSNBC, and they thought, oh my gosh, here we are stuck in the middle, and that's where you get run over. And so they decided, they made a conscious choice to sort of move in that direction. And again, when Trump was elected, I mean, Jim Acosta was, openly declared war on Trump, and he was their prime guy in the White House press briefing room, just
Zucker wanted
grandstanding day after day after day. Exactly. And by the way, he became, he wrote books about it. He became very famous, earned himself a lot of money, a lot of notoriety. He was going on, the late night shows and all that. It was a huge success for him, but it alienated and really destroyed the CNN brand to the point where they're hardly distinguishable from MSNBC these days.
Mm-hmm. So that's the problem. Can Washington Post go back, Andrew? Can they, if Jeff Bezos wants to do the Zuckerberg thing and bring the Washington Post back to where it was, I don't know, decades ago? Many people would argue it's always had a strong left-wing bias, but I would say not as strong as today. It's gone full Rachel Maddow. But can it be corrected? Kessler in this piece is lamenting that I'm reading from the piece, the Post liberal columnists generated huge traffic. That's because of the liberal slant of the readership. And now they've all quit. Every day I checked the daily traffic numbers, and year over year, it was like being on a water slide with no bottom. I ran one of the most popular features at the Post, an internationally recognized brand. I loved working there, but now working at the Post feels like being on the Titanic after it struck an iceberg, drifting aimlessly as it sank with not enough lifeboats for everyone. The Carpathia, i.e. Bezos, and that was the ship that was, he gets to it, appears too far away and too distracted to help. And the captain is shouting commands that the solution is a different ship.
Well, it's artfully written. I wouldn't have edited that part of it, Tom. I think that was a nice little paragraph. But I think the question you asked is, could they shift to the middle, and would that help the brand? Would that help them build back their audience? I'm going to say yes. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it seems to me that what they're doing now isn't working, and you see that. You see that across the board. I mean, CNN isn't working, MSNBC isn't working, the Washington Post isn't working, arguably the New York Times isn't working the way it used to. NPR isn't working. None of these sort of people who are groups that have sort of latched on to sort of ideology first as their sort of lodestar are having trouble. So yeah, heck, why not? Why not try to go back to being more objective or being more balanced? It certainly works for RealClearPolitics, so I think it should work for them.
To do that, though, I think, we've seen these newsrooms be captured by all of the sort of young, woke journalists that are coming up out of, Columbia Journalism School and the like. And anytime that anything happens, they throw these hissy fits and basically browbeat their managers into, reverting to or staying the sort of liberal course. I mean, I really do think if Jeff Bezos was serious about that, if the Washington Post is serious about that as a strategy, they would have to absolutely clean house. I mean, fire everybody and start from scratch and start
everyone's
and hire
fired.
Some editors who are conservative and some who are liberal, and hire some journalists who come from Hillsdale as opposed to just Columbia, and really sort of rebuild the ethos at the Washington Post to be sort of bipartisan as opposed to what it is now, which is completely captured by progressives.
Yeah, the first thing you do is you stop hiring anyone who has a master's in journalism from a U.S. institution. That's the absolute first thing you do.
Do the Roger Ailes rule. He wasn't hiring people who got their masters at Columbia. If he did, it was because he had a soft spot for them personally for some reason. They knew the parents or what have you. But he knew, and he was not looking for journalists. I mean, when I went into Fox News, I remember thinking I was going to dazzle everybody because I had a law degree and I'd practiced law for 10 years. No one cared about that. Of course, I learned all they really care is about your resume tape and, how do you deliver a story and can you penetrate the lens and, are you a good storyteller and all that. And then I was like, I always felt like, okay, because in journalism, it's turned very elitist. If you look at the resumes of virtually anybody over at NBC, it's Harvard and Yale and Princeton. And I went to Syracuse and Albany Law. And I felt somewhat like, is that going to hurt me there? Is this going to hurt? I have no idea because Fox is #1 and all this. No, to the contrary. It was a big bonus at Fox. They wanted people who weren't from those institutions, who didn't think they were better than everybody. And it's still part of the Fox News formula to find people on air who you feel like you could have a beer with. The other channels just don't get it. They will never get it, that they will never have the ratings of Fox News. And the Washington Post, I don't know. As much as I criticize Lauren Sanchez, they could probably use a hefty dose of this woman in changing the editorial over there. I mean, seriously.
Megyn, can I say one more thing, going back to what you said about giving advice to these folks and them not taking it, and this idea that, having people who actually represent the MAGA point of view, right? You still see that if you watch any of these Sunday shows, and I stopped watching them years ago because they're just they don't make news and they're not really informative. But, I'll look at the Sunday show lineups from time to time and it's the same thing. It's like two sort of liberal journalists and one liberal political operative, and then like an establishment Republican or an anti-Trump Republican. Those are the panels that are appearing on Face the Nation and Meet the Press and This Week. It doesn't have, rarely do you have someone who actually represents Donald Trump and the MAGA point of view talking about these issues. And so
Never.
In that sense, it doesn't even reflect reality.
No, at best, they'll put on a Republican who hates Trump. That's the only way you get booked. You get interviewed at one of these roundtables or seminars, or you get on CNN or MS. If they're ever going to put a Republican on, it's got to be old school, the kind that hates Trump, and never, never, never a MAGA. It's just, look, my concern, I don't care about CNN or MSNBC at all. I literally do not care if they dry up and go away tomorrow. But I do care about newspapers. Like, I think we need them. I mean, we get a lot of our news from newspapers. It's like there is a role in America for the shoe leather reporter who has time to go out there and contact sources and craft stories and get stories. I mean, it's almost like the month of August, Andrew. Is there any news if the reporters don't report on it? Like everything slows down because people go on vacay. Same thing the 2 weeks over Christmas. Right. We need reporters. Without the reporters who are out there, and it tends to be newspaper or print reporters, the news dries up. So I do think there's a place for these people. And it is kind of important to save these newspapers. Otherwise, I don't want all of my news coming from podcasters who don't tend to have a model that allows for that kind of in-depth, time-consuming, nuts and bolts reporting.
Yeah, I buy your point, but at the same time, I'd say, look, the newspaper, as we know it, the sort of daily newspaper, its time may have come and gone, and maybe there's Kessler going on to Substack, and people tuning into your program and dwarfing the audiences of some cable shows. Maybe the future is online.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they are moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. And Birch was an advertiser on this show 12 months ago. If you had purchased then, you'd be 40% richer today. Now's the time. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by burying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold so easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold is going to send you a free info kit on gold. Look into it, see if it's right for you. There's no obligation, just useful information to help you make a decision. With an A+ rating, with a Better Business Bureau, and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.